We are so excited to have you. Michael is a dad of 7 and a grandfather of 4 and a pediatrician. You may have come across his videos. You probably have come across his videos on social media, which we all love because you really speak to parents. And I think it's a very comforting feeling when we watch your videos because you make it feel so much less anxiety inducing as someone who's been a parent 7 times and knows a lot and a pediatrician.
Yeah. And I also want to call out that he is our first dad on this podcast. I know it's called More Than Moms. And we typically have all of these like moms on the podcast, but what better way to start our first dad than having Michael on?
I just want you to know that the gravity of the moment is not lost on you.
No, it's a really big deal
it's
for us too.
It's a heavy burden to bear, and I hope that I'm up to it because I feel very like your audience is, there's a high bar here, and I have to.
Well, I'm sure you'll meet it because I bet you 90% of them are already following you. So you're a dad of 7, a pediatrician, and you've taken to Instagram and really sharing your thoughts on social media, which again is incredible that you even have time for all of that, given your current life. So tell us though, let's start with, how did you raise 7 kids? Because you mentioned that you had 3 boys under 4 and then 4 girls consecutively.
In a row. Yeah. So we lived in Baltimore during my medical training. We got married young-ish. I think we were married when we were 23, 24. And then we had 3 boys in under 4 years. And that got me to the end of residency. We were about to start a fellowship. And then we realized that was a bad idea. Then we moved to Denver in 2000. And then we had 4 daughters in a row.
Year after year?
No, spread out a little more. I think we kind of wised up because we kind of, figured out. But my youngest daughter, my youngest child is about to turn 16. She was born in 2010.
Wow. Okay. So you've parented in the 90s, the early 2000s, and 2010.
Correct. I also parented in my 20s, 30s, 40s, and now 50s, and how that is a very different thing as well.
I just want to know, how is that possible? Because we were just talking about this. I got through 2 under 2 boys. I can't even fathom a third. And here you are with 7, going through residency, keeping your marriage alive. Like, what happened?
First is picking an amazing human being who very committed to growth, very committed to intentionality, who, listen, when you get married, you're 2 imperfect people who are trying to figure it out. And so the number one way that I did it was found an amazing person who is also an amazing human being and an amazing mother, because it would have been impossible, because the residency has changed a lot, but it was still kind of the old version when I was involved in it. And so I was gone for 30 hours at a time. And when I was home, I was falling on my face, and 3 years of that, and living in a 600 square foot apartment with 3 little boys, which to this day, I'm still how we ever did that is unfathomable. So that is, if you're asking how I did it because I didn't do it. I had an amazing person who leaned into it. And then our spiritual journey as a couple, and being committed Jews, and how that infuses parenting and raising kids, that buoyed us during really, really tough times.
And did you have community support, family support?
No. I mean, both of our homes of origin were, like many, they're imperfect, and the details are, not important, but we were kind of on an island. Although we lived in a community that was supportive, but what I've learned in the last 30 years is that there is an irreplaceable value to your family when you're raising little kids. It doesn't, we have so many families move to Colorado because they love the weather and the mountains. It feels great. And they get there and their families are so far away. And that was our experience. And it doesn't matter what the mountains look like when you have 2 toddlers in the house. You could be in North Dakota. It would feel the same because you're just immersed in that. You're not just, and it was great having good weather and taking your kids hiking and learning how to ski, but those are rare. And I counsel people, there is a irreplaceable value to proximity, to family in your life when you're in this era of your little kids, raising your little kids.
No, 100%. Like, I personally don't have any family close, and it's definitely challenging.
It's challenging.
Not gonna lie. Okay, so you're a pediatrician, even though you're about like 6'7", and a lot of people don't think you're a pediatrician. You was a basketball player and whatnot. And what I love about that too is that I think, so my pediatrician personally, I don't know about you, Dale, she's not a mom. And, and I know a lot of pediatricians who are not moms or not dads.
Not parents. I know a lot that are not parents.
And you have 7. So what better person to be a pediatrician than to know firsthand and have experienced all the stages of parenthood, even grandparenthood, and have that medical school background and all the experience needed. So that's incredible, first and foremost. I think you've probably added so much value to your patients. And then you are also on Instagram and you have a ton of followers and your videos go viral every single time. People like Dale and I look to your videos to bring us back to earth when we see on social media all this, like, you have to do this type of parenting, this type of parent, don't say this, say this. And you have this like refreshing perspective of like, no, just be you, listen to your intuition, put out the noise and just keep trusting yourself. And this is how you should be parenting. Tell us how you even got started on social media. Sure. How did that go in? Was it immediate success? Because it seems like every single video you put out within 5 minutes has like millions of likes.
So I'll answer the question by by kind of just quickly. My professional path was a little non-traditional. My initial focus and my fellowship was pediatric critical care pulmonology, which I didn't complete, but that was my focus. When I moved to Denver, I was practicing for 15 years exclusively pediatric emergency, hospitalist, critical care medicine. And I had a moonlighting gig. There was a nice Jewish guy in Castle Rock who was a displaced, little old Jewish guy from Brooklyn. And I did 1 day a week in his office because my kids kept outgrowing their shoes. I needed a shoe job. So that was my shoe job. And then 15 years in, I was burning out because I was working nights, I was working days. It's a demanding way to make a living as a pediatrician. And Dr. Josepher, who owned the practice where I was moonlighting, wanted to retire. And my wife and I realized that we needed to have a business because at that point we had 5 kids. And so I went into business for myself in primary care. I took over the practice. Mm-hmm. And that was just the dawn of social media as a business project. So that's where I started. I started dabbling in it probably about 10 years ago. And then for at least the last 5 or 6 years, being both on Instagram and on TikTok, and you're screaming into the void. You're trying to find your voice. You're trying to find your lane. You're trying to find what sets you apart or how you talk about things, and you get caught up in trends and you try this and you try that. And I just stuck with it, but it was sort of a sideline while I was running my business and growing my practice. And it really changed pretty dramatically just in the last year, where all of a sudden, it was me getting healthy, because I think that changes my voice. I had a really big health challenge. We just talked about it. I had my leg amputated last summer. And the change in my mental health, emotional health, and physical health was dramatic. And then I could see things differently. I could approach things differently. I found my voice in a different way. I got some professional coaching also because I realized that if I wanted to make a change in people's lives where because I felt my content had something to say that was unique. It was a unique perspective because there's not many pediatricians who are on social media that have the breadth or what I did professionally and personally. So I found better ways to get it out, got coaching on that, and started becoming more consistent that I wanted this to be an important part of what I did, and had other professional goals about wanting to grow in different ways. And so that's in the last years when it really changed in that way. But I've been doing it for a long time, 5 to 7 years consistently.
Right. It always looks like it happened overnight, but people don't see the early years. Mm-hmm. So you obviously have unique messaging in the way people follow you because they love to hear from you. So as a parent and as a pediatrician, what would you describe your style of caring for kids, parenting? Because there's so many different forms these days. And I think that people get so caught up.
I agree with you. And a lot of this is colored by my own journey. Mm-hmm. And my first 3 boys, when they come home, they're adults. I apologize to them every time, to the point where they're like, enough, Dad. It's okay. We got it. But I was not a good parent. I was just leaning on the poor tools that I was given because I didn't have a lot of things to lean on. And I was in a really difficult phase of life. I was young and I was overextended during that period of my life from a rest and emotional bandwidth standpoint. And I evolved tons. And I think that to answer your question, the most important things to recognize is that all of my kids teach you something about yourself that you need to look into. Acknowledging my own wounds that were not healed, and why, because I reacted instead of responded. I did that for a very long time and didn't see it. And learning that about myself, that to be the best parent is to be the best version of yourself, and being honest and able to, and the humility to accept that and to look at parenting that way. And the people, when you do that, you have all the tools to be the best parent your kids need without overly focusing on this hack, this parenting style, that parenting style. Each child is a Rubik's Cube that needs to be solved individually. So I don't believe there's such a thing as a parenting hack. There are some research about this parenting style definitely produces this, that, but that has to be couched with the fact that each one of your kids is a unique soul that has unique needs, and leaning into the fact that this child needs certain things that my other child doesn't need, and this child needs certain things that my other child didn't need, and no child gets the same household.
Mm-hmm.
When you have 7, you really appreciate that. My 7th child did not grow up in the same home that kids 1 or kid 2 or kid 3 did. It's a totally different universe that child knows.
Right. And you've evolved so much over a child too.
Yes. And I have a lot of pain from the type of parent that I used to be.
And I feel like a lot of us as parents now, we reflect on our own childhood experiences, and it's easy to blame our parents and be like, oh, they did this, they did that. But we're only as good as the tools that we're given. And I feel like with social media nowadays, we're exposed to, maybe it's like the pendulum has swung the other way where it's like too much information, which has made parents stressed out. But I think most of us are a little more conscientious of how we want to parent and show up for our kids.
100%. I mean, listen, the beauty of social media is that it's a great learning tool and we learn so much. But as we were discussing before we kind of started this, is that what I see, because I must have, at this point, millions of families, is that the overload is generating so much anxiety and so much uncertainty. And you can be the best version of a parent without all that if you just lean into being the best version of yourself first. And that has transformed my home and how my kids see me and how I show up for them.
I actually feel like I learned that the hard way, because I feel like with my first, I was so wrapped up in everyone is more credible than me. They have more kids. They're a doctor. They have better opinions. I'm just a first-time mom. What do I know? And with my second, I just feel so much more like in tune with my intuition. And no, I actually don't want to go to that new activity because my kid can just play at home or go to the park. Like, we don't need overstimulation, or even doing things that put myself first so that I feel like I have the bandwidth to be present with my kids. And I love that you mentioned that as well at the beginning. You said that, you have to be the best version of yourself, because once you take care of yourself, your kids, when they have a happier mom, happier dad, they will be happier, and it translates into them. And I think so often a lot of parents try to do things that they feel like is good for their kids. And like, maybe that's more activities, more travels, more this, more that, instead of doing the things that put themselves first so that they can be the best version of them for their child, which I think is much more important.
100%. And I think one of the biggest lessons that took me too long to learn is that the spiritual energy part of this is gigantic. And that when you are able as a parent to change your energy, change how you show up without any say it this way, say it that way. When your child's throwing a tantrum, make sure you do A, B, or C, but just your presence being different, everything responds to that without necessarily, well, this is the tool for this and this is the tool for that. It's transformative. And look, the era of parenting you guys are in, it changes so much between the toddlers and then the school years. And then I had a real hard time with the shift from the school years to adolescence, that shift from being the manager to just being the consultant, because we're just so used to being the manager.
Like letting go of control.
Letting go of control, but having healthy boundaries, but allowing that autonomy and independence because the mutual respect, your kids can feel that with still having healthy boundaries. Teenagers need boundaries like little kids do. It just needs to look and feel different to them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's talk about boundaries.
Yeah.
It's a good one. Because we want to do some
I love the Dr. Becky definition of boundaries.
Okay,
it was
so
huge
because
for
we
me.
want to do, we have a lot of like questions.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah, sure.
Because we would want you to answer it, especially as it relates to things that are more controversial, like sleep training or certain products, from like how you would see it. But let's start with boundaries. So what are some boundaries that you had in your household to kind of protect the family unit? Whether it was, home at a certain time or no phones at dinner, or like what are some boundaries that you feel are very important to a happy childhood?
Yeah. I've been listening to you guys a lot. And I know we all love Dr. Becky, and she has taught me so much that I wish I had when I was starting, when I was where you guys were, that boundaries are something that I am going to do and you don't have to do anything, being the child, but that I'm just going to do in a loving, regulated way. I first thought boundaries were about enforcement and compliance, and that when I didn't get compliance, I had to keep ratcheting it up to get compliance. That's what I thought boundaries were when I first started raising kids and having a house full of exhausting little boys. And now I know that boundaries are about how I bring my presence and say, this is how we do things. This is who we are. This is a value. And I'm going to lovingly hold that line. Your response and reaction is yours, and I'm going to validate it and be there for it and help you through it without necessarily forcing enforcement, compliance, and control. But how that comes across is different when you have a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old and an 18-month-old versus a 7-year-old. First of all, 7 and 8-year-olds are the best version of people.
Really? I'm excited for that.
I mean, literally the best version of people. And then different when they are adolescents. And so in our home, like some of those boundaries, but when I look back, it was structured. Like there's a really phenomenal Jewish sort of idea about this, that boundaries in parenting, I always say like we're shepherds, not engineers. Have you guys heard that?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
There's 2 processes that go along with being a shepherd. There's planting and there's building. Planting is what you model and how you show up to your kids for the things that you want them to absorb. I want my kids to be kind, so they see me talking and behaving kindly to other people in a genuine way, not a contrived way. And they see it even when it's hard. Exercise and self-care. My kids see that I take care of myself. I train and I work out. And I don't have to tell them, I don't have to lecture them about it. They've seen that from the time they were toddlers. Now, all of my kids I see internalize that. I don't have to go, you really should do this for, I don't have to do that because they've seen it from my wife and I. Right.
It's so true.
So that's planting. Planting is how you, in an intentional way, show up and your kids absorb that without you lecturing them on it. And building is the basic healthy structure around them. We have Friday night dinner. We are going to show up at this table. Your parents are going to be there. So it's nice if you're there. And I never had to tell my kids because they value it. It's been there their whole life. The phones are away, the electronics are off, and we're just there. My teenagers loved it. And they don't even, it's not even a question. I don't have to go, come down for, it's Friday night dinner. Don't you guys know? That never shows up in the conversation because they just, their whole lives, because they get us with nothing else. And we talk about everything, and I give my kids a blessing. I put my hands on their head, been doing it their whole lives. That's building. Bedtime is this time. We brush our teeth. We sit in the car seat. Those are building. That's the boundaries. And they're not negotiable, but they're also not every little thing my child does. And that is how in the Russell Barkley, you're the shepherd. That's how you create the field that your kids are grazing in, as it were.
That totally makes sense. I mean, I think I really resonated with the planting, and it kind of goes back to being the best version of ourselves because, it's just so funny. My 2.5-year-old told a girl at class, and her mom repeated to me that she goes, my mommy does Pilates. I have never said that to my son, but it's just so funny that like, this is stuff that he sees. And I think it's all the more reason to show that like, we put care into ourselves. Our kids see that it's important to us and how we show up. And I think another thing that with your first point is like, I think a lot of kids gain resentment with their parents when they do hold those boundaries that are like consequential, like trying to control the outcome. And it's like that backfires later in life. And that's probably what distances kids from their parents.
It does. It's when I was growing up and, my house was all about appearances, compliance, and control. And my parents it was all about the lectures and the expectations, but stuff that I never saw them. It never came across to me in how they functioned that any of this stuff meant anything to them.
Mm.
So talk to me about lectures since you brought it up.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us, Dale and I are in this phase where our toddlers like to hit their siblings.
Yeah.
Okay. So like pushing them over, hitting them.
One, are we allowed to curse?
Yes.
Yeah, go for it.
Toddlers are assholes. Everyone knows this. They're beautiful, wondrous assholes, but they're assholes. And if we can just accept they're assholes and that it's because their brain development allows them only to be assholes, then we can just lovingly kind of and having a sense of humor about it helps a ton. Yeah, you're right.
So tell us what you do in that situation.
Got it.
Okay. Because by the way, in these situations, we've had these like toddler experts on and whatnot, and they're like, say this, not this.
I know,
and in the moment,
I've heard all of them.
In the moment, I'm like trying to remember, and then at the same time,
and I'm like, where to go back to my notes?
And then I'm like annoyed.
Hold that thought, Leo. I have to. Okay.
No, but actually, that's how I feel. Right?
That's how I feel too.
Okay, so tell us. And by the way, lecturing, in my experience, has not worked. Any of that stuff works. The only thing that works is like play versus logic. So I'm not trying to like be like, Gemma, we don't do that to our brother. It's more of like, okay, let's like, I don't know, try to distract and play or bring some element of play into this because I'm not going to get what I want, vice versa.
My disclaimer is that I was terrible at this too. And we were all about timeouts and worried about like how this looks to everyone else and being so stressed out that people are going to think of me a certain way because of how I react. So I have to, and my kid better, right? And so that constant need to control. So I was terrible at it. And I've gotten, thank God, better. But the first thing to remember is that all these behaviors are neurobiologically based because of their brains. And understanding that, and it's hard to understand in the moment, but just rehearsing. For me, I always, what's helped is like understand it before it happens. Like, and when I do it badly, which happened a lot, I would always think, okay, that didn't go well, and thinking about it. And I always try to repair. Like, Daddy did not do that well. I'm really sorry. Apologizing to my kids was a huge thing when I didn't handle it well. But you're right. Since you guys are in that phase, let's talk about this age group. You guys have probably already figured out that trying to logic a toddler out of impulsive, emotionally based behavior does nothing. It just pours like pouring gasoline on a fire, right?
Right.
And I love going to the park with my grandchildren because I love watching, no offense, millennial moms, but the millennial moms whose kids are 2 and 3 and acting like 2 and 3-year-olds in public at inopportune times, and then going, now everyone's named Aiden now. I thought, Aiden.
So true.
Aiden, Olivia. No, like everyone's named Aiden, Olivia. Didn't we talk about this? Mommy doesn't like it when, and they're having a whole monologue with
like
the
a
kid.
therapy session.
It's like already gone. You have to set the boundary, which is, I can't allow you to do this. So you guys talked about this on your last one, the natural consequence.
Right.
So the kids understand that. And you simply just change location because you can't just allow them to hit other kids, even though you know it's normal, even though you know it happens. You still have to, the social contract, we have to address it, and you leave it alone. And their reaction, which is usually, and you go, I see you're really sad. I'm right here. And just like you pointed out, I think one of you guys mentioned last time, you just be present. And then when they're ready to reconnect, it starts off a lot faster when you don't continue a monologue about it. You reconnect and then you move on.
Yeah.
And
I love that you're saying this because my husband, when it happens, he gets like, Gemma, we do not do that. And he's like, Gemma, and he's like talking to her like she's me, like a human, like an adult. And I keep telling him, so I can't wait to like replay that part back for my husband.
First of all, dads are terrible at this. No offense, dads, but all of us.
Like they get reactive.
Dads are fixers. We like to fix it. And listen,
now my husband does that to my 15-month-old. So I'm like, he doesn't fucking know.
No idea.
He's like,
and listen, to be the idea, and I'm very sympathetic. The world is a very different world than it was in the 90s and even the 2000s. We are all so worried about parenting in the public sphere.
Oh, let's talk about that. Public meltdowns. This is a big thing for our audience.
And giving our kids trauma. That's a big one for us.
So
They're going to have trauma anyway.
The best advice I ever got out of this, that took me a long time to really integrate, but this is what I tell parents, is that the 80-20 rule, 80% of your interactions with your kid, you should try to make them either neutral or positive. And only 20% where you're setting a boundary where you have to like set the boundary that generates the response, the meltdown. In order for that to occur, we have to let certain things go as parents to set them up for success, knowing what's normal. Like for instance, in the 90s, Target was open at a certain time and closed at a certain time. And you could not go online and order shit to come to your house. So people, and my wife we have to go to Target at 4:45 p.m. with 3 toddlers. Is that going to be successful most of the time? Of course not. So you go, your kids are all over the place and you have to tell them no, and they melt down. My wife and I have left so many full carts in the aisle of Target. So when things changed, we realized we don't have to do that. But it's not setting us up for success to have positive, neutral or positive interactions 80% of the time, because if you go, so knowing that, giving up what your house has to look like so other people think you're a good parent. So you're not chasing your kid around going, put that away, put that down, this clean up. Like, the house was a disaster and we embraced it. It's okay. But more of our interactions were neutral or positive instead of chasing your kid around. So we had to change in order for that to occur, because when toddlers are going to be their best selves and when they're not. And just sticking to that idea that we had to let things go more. And that's, once again, that's not letting hitting go. It's not letting running in the street go or bedtimes be whenever. But there's so much in between that we chase our kids around and are in their ear about. Just stop.
But it's also like, that also goes to the point of like, you don't have to go to like every single social function.
That's what I was thinking. Like,
just because people want you to go or to be seen or whatnot. Because I find meltdowns are much more likely to occur when there's like a birthday party that I'm not even close with.
And you have to wake up
there's so much sugar and you wake them up from the nap and there's all this like candy and cake and all this stuff. It's like a meltdown waiting to happen. Why am I putting myself
in? And you go because so-and-so might be there and she's going to ask why I wasn't there. And so making more decisions because I want my kids to be successful and I don't want to be in that situation where I feel like I have to be that parent. And then it's magic because 80% of the time you're not having to do that. It's magic. Yeah. And I said the best reason to have kids is to just say no to stuff. I can't, my kids.
I love that.
And not show, and it's the best reason to have children. And especially being an introvert that's forced to be an extrovert. I love saying, I'm sorry, I can't. No.
I have kids.
And there's so much judgment I find from parents for the ones who like aren't social and like they don't take their kids to anything. They don't go anywhere. And like, I think a lot of these parents don't want to be that parent. But I've noticed too, and that's like something that I'm being intentional about this year, is I think when we overschedule, when we do too much, like we know it's going to pull our child out of, like, for example, we had a holiday party. I woke up Leo, my older son, up from his nap. I knew he was going to be miserable and I was right. He was that kid screaming the whole party. And I just was so mad. But I'm like, to your point, it didn't flow the schedule. And I don't want to be someone who's schedule bound 24/7, but I think it's an awareness that is this worth like 80-20, like some things we'll suck it up for, but for the most part, we don't need to fill everything up.
And go to the party sometimes, but when you go, know that I'm just not going to be limit setting a lot at the party.
Yeah.
And because I'm accepting the fact that when I go to the party, and I'm not going to be chasing after my kid going, you already had a cupcake, just let it go.
Yeah.
Deal with it later. And it's okay. It's okay that the things that you uphold as ways you run your home are not going to be applicable in every setting, but you do it and accept it that sometimes your routine is going to be interrupted and your kid has a great time. And then they come home and their assholeness is exploded because of the sugar. But that's okay. That's in private. And your kid had the best time at the party and their face was frosting from here to here. Fine. It was amazing. Yeah. And he'll remember that. But that's not how home is. And that's okay too. Being able to make those shifts for the happiness. So once again, that sticking to 80-20, like when I was at that party, I never saw my kid, my 3-year-old, and that's okay. And they were in the candy bowl and at the cupcake table and at the donut stand, whatever, fine. It's okay. It's one day.
Right.
Okay. Dad of 7.
Yeah.
Pediatrician. What do you not allow in your house?
Yeah.
Let's talk products, foods, toys.
Sure.
Tell me.
Well, when my kids were younger, any toy that made noise was done. Like any battery operated thing, because it was just overwhelming. Like when we got rid of that and went with like Brio trains for a while, my house was so much happier. Like things that just got rid of that. And when my kids were little, like you guys are really intentional about it. I have really come to understand, and I did not learn this in med school residency, how central food and nutrition is to your kids' well-being, mentally, physically, and every other way. So, like I said, when the grandparents took them out and bought them a Sprite, fine, have the Sprite. But in my home, like we got much better about the food landscape in my home was really like away from the sugar, away from the processed foods. And my kids were better because of that. So those were the...
How did you handle picky eating with that?
Picky eating is a huge
I'm struggling
topic.
with that so hard.
Exactly. I think, why is it a struggle? Because it generates so much anxiety for us. We are biologically wired to sit down and watch our kid eat, and then we feel better. Like, oh, you're not going to die today.
Yeah.
And being able to recognize where it's triggering me, but my kid is fine. And then when you're able to get to that space, plus getting some coaching, and this is where having a pediatrician that is not a parent is problematic, because you're going and you bring this up to your pediatrician who's not a parent. I'm fond of saying you don't need running shoes to run, but fucking helps.
Yeah.
So when you go and you go, they go, okay, well, make sure that they're drinking 16 to 24 ounces of milk every day and try these things that I've read in the textbook. Thanks. Have a great day. So part of that is knowing that toddlers are oppositional. Toddlers' appetites do not line up with ours. Their appetites change. They're in a much slower level part of the growth curve. They don't need to eat the way you need to eat. And if your kid is growing, once or twice a week, you're going to have your toddler eat a meal with you that you can see them eat the meal a week. And the rest of the time, it's a fruit snack and a goldfish.
Yes, that's what I'm doing.
Good vibrations and sunshine. And that's...
Honestly, it's very validating.
This is very validating.
And that's okay. And that's okay.
Guys, you heard it here. It's okay.
And that's how they're built. And then a random Wednesday night, they'll sit down and smash everything you put in front of them like a python. And then they're fine for the next week.
That's exactly... speaks to my soul. Because first of all, the only thing my toddler wants is snacks or mac and cheese.
Right.
And I'm making all these dinners and I'm putting so much effort. And he's just like, I'm all done. And I'm like so frustrated. And I'm like, and even on our trip, my husband and I are like, our son looks too skinny. Like he needs to get a bulk up. And I'm like, okay, he's just a toddler. Like I've given him the options. Like it's not like if he wants to eat, there are plenty of options there. He doesn't want to eat. So he can't be that hungry.
No. And so there's a great person. She actually lives in my community, Melanie Potok, who's a feeding therapist. And her channel and her stuff about this is amazing. So I recommend everybody go and follow her, because she talks about this all the time. And yes, that's normal and healthy and typical. And your kid, when they do sit down once a week and they just eat the whole thing of salmon you put in front of them, or the steak, and they're great. They're doing fine. You don't have to like hyper focus on every meal, and be an eating role model and not an eating manager. So the social part of eating, you sit down, we're connecting, we're talking, the food's there, and you're not mentioning or talking about the food at all. So many parents tell me, well, at daycare or preschool, they eat everything all the time, and they come home because at daycare, the teacher's not hovering over your kid going, come on. They're eating.
one more bite. I hate
with
that.
their community of kids, and they're just absorbing that. So they just eat to their whatever they need. So running your meals like that as social connection and parental connection, the food is present, and saying nothing else about it. And then this phase will more quickly, they all do it. So it's a normal developmental thing. Remember, toddlers are also by definition oppositional. Do this. No, F you, right? So it's
right.
So the less you run up against that and focus on, oh, I love, you looked like you had so much fun today, and get them involved in just where the food is there and they're seeing you eating and talking. They model that. They leave the table, they eat nothing, fine. and they might come back and be hungry later.
Yeah, what do you do in that situation?
Wait, so
and
we
they want
just-
snacks.
Yeah. So it's okay because
Do you give them the snack or do you offer them the meal again?
First off is that we started, and what I learned from Melanie Potok is you sit, even if you're not eating, you sit down with them and they're hungry and then you engage them while they're eating. So at least they get that same idea.
Okay, so they're distracted.
Yeah.
So you're talking to them about the day.
Right, and not talking about, and then finding the healthy things, like you said, mac and cheese.
Right.
One of the great, I have, she still is a mac and cheese addict. I have no brand deal with them. Goodles.
I've been doing that. Goodles.
Do you know
Protein, fiber, like fun, and it tastes fine. Eat the Goodles, fine. I feel much better about that.
And cucumber's a hero.
Cucumber
is a hero.
Cucumber, my daughter doesn't like cucumber.
Oh, well, your daughter eats she's a good eater.
No, she actually doesn't eat anymore. So this is my
She said she simply just stopped eating.
No. So this is my question though. So we sit down, all of us at 5 p.m. usually. My husband's hit or miss, but my son just guzzles every food. Like the guy's amazing, so healthy.
Isn't
and
it
my
great
daughter,
when you have a child like that, it's
he's a baby too, so
he
doesn't
but
really
also
know.
like you realize it feeds your soul because
it does.
Because it's just
makes
like
me
we
so
are so
happy.
programmed that when we see it, it's like, oh, I feel so much
She'll
better.
eat like salmon, broccoli, tots, and down
Okay,
it.
so I have her plate out and we're all eating, we're all talking, and she just wants to run around and play. And so before I was like, Gemma, no, we sit down, it's dinner time, and come sit here. But now like her plate's there and I don't even care. And so she'll sometimes have like one bite and then I won't even say anything anymore. And then later though, she does
still try to engage her a little bit.
We engage her.
But then, to force a toddler to try and sit there so you feel better is a losing
Okay, this is good because
proposition.
we thought we had to make them sit there. But then she'll be like, in an hour, she'll be like, Mommy, I want a banana. And I'm like, okay, have a banana.
Okay, thank you for this because what I've been doing, this is very validating.
But that's a boundary. Mommy, I want 3 Oreos. I can't give you 3
We don't
Oreos.
even have Oreos.
Right? Well, I know, you know what I mean.
Yeah,
But like, you're right. You don't. You're evolved, nutritionally aware parents. But if she wants the banana and she wants,
I would dream of her having my son right now. I'm like, wait. Okay, so this is what I do, and maybe I'm wrong. And I've been preaching this probably on like 12 podcasts. I've probably been steering parents the wrong way. But what I say to my son when he doesn't want to eat, he's in his high chair. My other son's in his high chair. We're sitting down at the table. The second he's down, he has one bite or whatever, and he's like, I want to get out and play. I say to him this, I say, you do not have to eat, but you do have to sit here till we're all done.
Mm.
Thoughts?
This is where so much is, every child is different and needs something else. So I had so many high energy boys that when I did that, it was like, so it's not worth it. So go play. And then, hey, how's it going over there? Look, having a good time. We're having, we're here too. This is great. And then sometimes they'll just drift back because they just get, and they want to be part of the group again. But it doesn't have to be rigid. And some kids, you do that and they're like, great, okay. It doesn't have to be the same. So many of our parents were like, this is how we do it. And we're going to ram every peg into the same hole. And it's compliance, but it doesn't have to be that way. And then everybody, the energy changes because the energy stops being this, come on, do it. You have to do it this way. I read this way. Dr. Beck, so-and-so said, it's okay because you're being intentional with the bigger picture that you're like, hey, I'm planting. So I'm not going to change what we're doing. And I'm going to just invite you to re-engage. Like there was this amazing book that I read recently. And once again, there's so many things that I've learned now that I'm like, I'd like to tell my, I call my wife Ema. We should really have another baby now because like we're so much better. But like there are cultures that the parents do what they do because they have to sew the nets and then they have to go, and they just invite the children to be part of what is the parents are doing to sustain everybody. And when they see how that works, it's really healthy. The kids aren't the focus. The parents aren't constantly focusing on entertaining and managing the kids. We've got stuff to do. We've got to go, but we would love for you to join us and be part of this. And I want to show you how to do this. Now, I know we're not sewing fishing nets and I know that we're not.
But even the dishwasher, the laundry.
Exactly. We're not hunting so we have a meal, but that concept really resonated with me. Now I have grandchildren your kids' age and I like to practice it. And man, it works. Instead of like, what do you want to do? Let's do this. And of course, sometimes you have to because we live in the modern world and that's the reality. But more when I'm like, hey, do you want to help Poppy do this with me? They're like, yes. And they're just like, we're just doing this together. And it's something I have to do anyway. When I invite them in and then it changes the shift. And of course you're going to have to like, hey, we have to go to the trampoline park, whatever it is. But there is this idea that you can decenter your kids a little bit Because what that does, that brings them into your orbit, and then you're modeling more. And then you're not just like constantly having that need to like manage their entertainment, their happiness, their day. It's a whole different way of thinking about the energy.
I love that. And I think I was just telling Annabel earlier yesterday, for like one of the first times that my dishwasher was clean and open. And my son said, I want to unload the dishwasher. And I actually had to make them dinner. But I was like, I'm going to take this opportunity. And I just like let a bowl drop. I let everything, but he wanted to go until that was done. He wanted to know where the little forks went, the big forks. And I was like, wow, like I think there was like a million other things I could have done. I had to prepare. My other son was coming home. And I just kind of let it happen because I was like, I want to make this a positive experience for him of like doing something that's like a chore, quote unquote, like not like, oh, we got to unload the dishwasher. Like, sure. I was like making it fun. And I was like, that was the first for us. So
I love this. More of that. Okay, so boys versus girls. So Dale has 2 boys. Yeah. I have a boy and a girl. Yes. I have noticed from my personal experience that my son is a little late to the game on a lot of things that my daughter was ahead of the game for. So I'm seeing it firsthand. Talk to us about the differences between boys and girls that you see from milestones to developmental to in school to growth, all of that.
In so many preschool spaces, there is an increasing intolerance for what was formerly recognized as normal and typical developmentally appropriate boy behavior that's different from girls. And more, it's being labeled by the preschool culture. And it is causing a huge amount of dysfunction. And 10, 15 years ago, those same spaces would go, oh yeah, that's typical. Boys and girls are different at this age.
What is it being labeled as?
ADD.
Oh, problematic. There's a diagnosis. You need an evaluation. Your 3-year-old boy, all these other little girls are sitting crisscross applesauce on the carpet square and are doing the project. And your little boy is running around the room, banging things with his head or a toy. And that is not okay. And he needs to be checked. And of course, they go to the pediatrician. And most of the time, if you're a pediatrician, is a tuned in, experienced person who has maybe a child, knows, no, that is normal. And then, of course, now they're getting 2 messages because they want to trust the preschool staff that there's something wrong with their boy. And their pediatrician keeps saying, no, that is developmentally appropriate. And the amount of confusion and uncertainty and real issues are exploding. And I think I've gotten 1,000 DMs from families sharing their experiences. So what do I see? In the preschool and toddler years, it is a biologically based, well-recognized developmental difference that boys and girls have slightly different but parallel tracks in many of the skills like expressive speech, emotional regulation, social play versus, doing things on their own, need for like energy, diffusion, and exercise, which are different. And they're not based on societal expectations. They're not based on sexist, imposed things. They are biologically programmed. And because I've been taking care of about 10 million children, boys and girls, and my own home, like, let's just talk language milestones. Very healthy and typical boys are not achieving the same, let's say, verbal milestones with vocabulary and word usage that on average, and there's always exceptions, but I've seen with my experience, I can tell you that the big averages, typical girls get to between 18 months and 2, typical boys who are completely healthy, normal, bright, and completely fine are often not achieving until between 2 and even 2.5 in terms of vocabulary, word usage, and things like self-regulation, things like, just following directions and all that stuff is just not there in the same way as girls. Mm-hmm. And that's normal. And because boys are unique and in this way and different, but preschool has become increasingly higher and higher expectations for all these things. And girls do that very naturally and easily, and boys just don't. And it's becoming this epidemic of something's wrong with your boy.
And how do you deal with parenting a boy to let them experience emotions and then with girls not to get overly into the emotion?
So let's just take the age range you guys are in. Boys are going to emotionally regulate and express that differently because of the slightly different expressive language skills and their lower threshold for frustration. And so they act out, they're a little more externalized with their emotional behavior. they're a little more aggressive, they'll hit, they melt down a little bit because they just don't have the same ability to talk about their feelings. So the first, as a parent thing, one is knowing that. I think the problem is that, especially if you're new to the parenting game, you just know maybe what the preschool is expecting. Like, he's not meeting the expectations, so something's wrong with him. And then that anxiety and worry kind of comes across with, why aren't you normal or like this? Because you just don't know. Recognizing this, setting boys up for success, they got to be outside more. They have to move more. That helps them with their emotional regulation. Girls too, but in a very unique way. Boys benefit from through the act of rough play, like with their dads. Like, that helps their emotional balance. That helps them regulate. So knowing that about sons and daughters is really valuable, and putting them in situations and spaces where that is provided for them, they're happier, and there's less of the up and down emotionally when the preschool is saying, sit here, do this, we're not going outside. Or even worse, I see boys being punished by, well, now you've lost outside time. The worst idea.
They're making it just harder for themselves.
Exactly. And then and for both boys and girls, the same thing we talked about. Validating their feelings, don't overtalk, just be a loving presence, and reconnect when they can, when their emotional kind of tidal wave kind of settles down.
So
and then
do you do timeouts for boys or girls?
I used to. Timeouts do nothing.
Okay, tell us more.
So do you guys remember that show Super Nanny?
No.
There was a British nanny who had a huge show called Super Nanny. And she was like, it was a huge
thing. I do remember
Joe
this.
somebody.
Yeah. I see.
And like, that reflected the ethos of the time. Because I remember we had little kids. It was like in the early 2000s, early 90s. And it was always separation and timeout, and I'll come back when you're ready. And I think people really tuned in, child development people like Dr. Becky showed us that is not a healthy way to help your kids regulate emotionally. Boys and girls, but especially let's take the boy in that situation, they need to borrow your regulation to help them regulate. So you do that by, let's say you need to set a boundary. So you have to remove them from the situation, because you said you can't let your boy beat up the little girl, Olivia in the sandbox. And when they have that reaction, you go, I'm right here, and I'm going to be here when you want to talk or when you want to feel better. And you just are present, but you don't abandon them from it, because they are borrowing your regulation to help themselves. And then you reconnect, and then you move on without punishing them for their behavior, their feelings necessarily. You gave them a consequence, but it's not punishment in that sense. It used to be this punishment, like, you're going to figure it out because I'm going to stick you in this place and I'm going to leave.
They don't care. They don't give two shits about that. You got to just actions. Remove the toy from them, remove them from the fun.
And then you are present for the reaction, and then you reconnect, and then you go do something else. Then they're learning to regulate. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay, let's keep going on this now. Next one, sleep training. A lot of controversy here.
Gosh, and talk about an idea that has evolved so much, because we were very much, and of course we went to our pediatrician. He was like, Ferber, and cry it out. And what anyone who's been a parent knows that, oh God, it worked great for kid A, but kid B is just a nightmare, and it's killing us. That's another space where there was no one-size-fits-all approach. And some kids are just naturally more low-key and regulated. And when you're ready, you don't jump to respond to them right away. And they figure it out. And it's like, wow, that was easy. And it didn't. And then some kids are just need your presence, and they escalate, and it's going on for hours. It's like, but my doctor said I had to not go in there, and only in a certain number of times. And now, I don't think you guys are reading, I'm sure, even the AAP has come out and said, hey, this whole cry it out thing has potential for emotional issues. I have really come to counsel people that it doesn't have to look any one way. We did it 7 different ways because we lived in an apartment, for instance, for our first 3 kids. I couldn't sleep train anybody because I didn't want to deal with 3 kids.
Right, because if one kid's crying, then yeah.
We even had one of them in our bed till he was 4. Caleb, if you're listening, I know you live in Miami and run a real estate company, but you used to sleep in our bed till you were 4. You cannot tell from my adult kids who did A and who did B. They're all fine. And so you do what reading your kid, knowing what your kid needs, and also knowing what you need. For some parents, it's just not going to work. I can't listen to it. It makes me too upset. And so I don't. And then you reapproach and when your kid's a little older and things settle down, or you have 2 bedrooms instead of 1 or 3 bedrooms instead of 2, and you can try again, it's okay. Sleep training is not a one-size-fits-all thing. And definitely to say that cry it out is the way to do it, or this is for every kid, is absolutely, we've learned that's absolutely wrong. And for some kids, it really is like not emotionally healthy for them.
I actually felt that with both kids. I just did it on my own. I did my own version of cry it out / gentle / anything. Exactly. But again, it needs to be, you need to tune into what works best for you. But if you are constantly sleep deprived because your kid is keeping you up, then you can't be the best parent. And then that's the issue.
And then you know you have to do something. So a lot of people in your kid's age group probably go through an experience where your kid was sleeping fine, then all of a sudden your toddler is just up.
Aggression, yeah.
You guys experiencing that?
No, I have actually...
my daughter climbed out of the crib.
I'm not even going to say it. I'm not even going to say it, but I haven't really had progression.
Don't say it. Don't jinx yourself.
Right, but that's
this is going to be
you
balanced.
realize it's such an individual temperament thing that your kids are just blessed with kind of temperaments that just they
keep the blessed.
Yeah,
they're more. There's a lot of things that not blessed.
No, but they just more easily self-regulate in that thing. And I had kids that just couldn't.
Yeah.
And so yes, you're sleep deprived. You have to do something. So the first thing is look at your routine. There is neuroscience around the circadian rhythms and melatonin cycle and around sleep. So sometimes you have to re-examine that. So let's just say for toddlers and preschoolers, I always say, hey, look at your outside time and your exercise. You need more of that because that really resets the internal clock. Mm-hmm. Is your bedtime routine the same every night? Is it the same time, going through the same steps? Toddlers thrive on that because it provides a sense of internal predictability and security, which make them feel less uncertain internally. Big mistake is, if I keep them up later, they'll sleep later. That does not work.
No, that never works.
Never works. So a lot of people, sometimes the shift was, I just have to start my bedtime routine earlier and things immediately improved. And then you have to look at diet and nutrition. If your kid is guzzling milk all day and doesn't eat well, their iron levels are low. Iron in this age group, the most important nutrient in their lives is iron. Their brain and their neurotransmitters need a healthy, available iron source and supply all the time. And it's the number one thing that I look at if parents tell me their kid's sleep is wrecked. I look at your milk consumption, their diet, and because milk, I'm sure you guys have heard, milk is fine, but they overuse it, and a lot of toddlers do.
Yeah, we're not milk people too much.
It blocks the absorption of iron, and it makes them less hungry. Mm-hmm. So their iron levels, and then that by itself, if you take your child to a pediatric sleep specialist, medical sleep specialist, the first thing they do is do a ferritin level, which is your body's bioavailable storage form of iron.
By the way, firsthand experience with that, when my daughter was having her sleep issues, I changed her diet and she was eating like steak every night and like salmon roe. Yeah. You remember?
Yeah.
Like liver. Yeah. And it changed everything. I mean, she doesn't do that now, by the way.
Right. So so that's where I start.
Yeah.
And then the nuts and bolts of how you do it can be different. Like one of my kids, one of the best things was when we went in to rescue them because we couldn't have the
cried out.
So we started this whole graduated extinction where we sat close for a while and then we came with the whole Ferber thing. I think has mostly been debunked. I think everybody recognizes that was bad advice and doesn't work for most people. Mm-hmm. And if it works, it's because anything would have worked because your kid's just that kind of kid.
Right.
Okay, so we're just about out of time, but I want to do, because I could talk to you forever, but I want to do some like quick rapid fires.
Speed round, sure.
Thoughts on screen time?
Screen time is the topic of our generation. Technology is not going anywhere. We parented at the dawn of the screen era and a lot of trial and error and made a lot of mistakes that I would definitely correct now. Screens are now so ingrained in this. We have to have an intentional approach. It doesn't have to look the same for every kid. There definitely is developmental things about too much screen time too early. I think the AAP puts numbers on it, like no significant screen time other than group watching until up through age 2, and then a certain amount of time. But you have to be intentional about it. Screen time does wreck or muck with their circadian rhythm, their melatonin cycle if it's overused. And plus, a lot of parents use it as a way to help their kids emotionally regulate instead of letting them be in their feelings because they don't like how their kids' negative emotions make them feel. So they throw a screen. So being intentional about not using it that way, but it's not the biggest evil of the world. And sometimes your kid needs to watch Miss Rachel so you can have a cup of coffee, and that is okay too. It's about having at least okay, I know why I'm using it. I'm intentional about it. I'm not using it as my primary form of emotional regulation. And I have at least a big picture view, and content is important. That has been shown. When kids watch things that are a little bit too
flashy or
overstimulating, it generates different behavioral changes. So being intentional about what your kids watch. I mean, my daughter-in-law, I love her. She's so intentional. Like for the most of my grandsons, like initial screen time, they watched old Mr. Rogers episodes from the 70s.
Done that. And Thomas the Train.
And they were just so like,
yeah,
exactly. Like just because that's how Mr. Rogers is. He brings that energy and that comes back at you.
Okay.
So.
Love that. Okay. Thoughts on vaccines, especially as it relates to little kids, because I think a lot of people feel like, no, I shouldn't be vaccinating my kids.
Sure. So you probably noticed I don't talk a lot about vaccines on my channel because not just that, so many of the other, everybody else talks about it. So I feel like I don't necessarily need to talk about it. And I approach it like this. The controversy about vaccines is manufactured and we are victims of our own success. In the 1800s, most people had a mini graveyard in their backyard to bury their children who didn't live past 5 because they died of diphtheria and measles and whooping cough. Right. And that doesn't happen anymore. In fact, I mean, listen, unfortunately in my work, I had to deal with child death more than I wanted to. But you guys go through life. Do you know anybody who's had a child that died of anything most of the time? I mean, it's rare.
Right.
But it used to be common. And that is 100% because of vaccines. They're the greatest medical advance
totally agree.
in human history in protecting the health and well-being of our children. And now people don't know that anymore because it's become assumed. Vaccines are safe and they're effective. And the information is democratized. You can find it, but the problem is you can find whatever you want to find. And so for most pediatricians, vaccines are not controversial. The difference is the difference between public health policy and private health choices. Public health policy has a duty to recommend protection of the most number of kids with safe and effective things. Private health choices, you can say to hey, in our situation for what we want to do something different, but that's a private health choice, but it shouldn't affect public health policy. So that's kind of like my short version of vaccines. Okay,
another question. And this is definitely controversial and wasn't even on our notes, but I just thought about it. We're Jewish, so obviously it's custom to circumcise kids. But I've seen a lot on social media about it's mutilation and what is like from a health standpoint, like it's not necessary. I mean, to me, growing up, like that was the thing I don't think any different.
Sure.
I'm not trying to be to say one way is. So I'm just curious what your thought.
Yeah. So I'll preface this by saying that I'm also like a Moyle in the sense I'm an expert in circumcision. I've been doing it for 30 years and I do it both medically and ritually. I've been doing about 4 to 5 circumcisions a week for the last 25 years. And I was trained in the traditional way.
Yeah.
So the first off, from a medical standpoint, no, circumcision is not medically necessary. It's a personal choice. That is absolutely clear. The evidence has shown that. There's no compelling medical reason to look someone in the eye and go, you need to circumcise your child for their well-being. That is just not true.
Okay.
We know that. It's a personal choice. This idea that as someone who has been doing it for a long time, that it is torture and that it's mutilation, I just simply disagree. From a trained person, a circumcision takes 1 to 2 minutes or less. There is now prescribed forms of pain control. We do injectable blocks. We do sugar. The vast majority of the kids I circumcise, they cry more during their diaper change than they do during the circumcision.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've seen too.
So there is a huge anti-circumcision movement around this whole idea of mutilation. I simply don't agree with that. I think that that's, once again, people layering their own personal views on people and trying to get everybody to agree with them because of their own agenda. It doesn't make sense to me.
Okay. What is the most overused medication for kids?
Over-the-counter cough and cold medicines that have been shown to offer no benefit. And I have seen way too many negative side effects from the antihistamine component and from pseudoephedrine, and especially Benadryl. Pediatricians telling, oh, you have a cold, give her Benadryl is so ludicrously, so unbelievably misinformed and dangerous. And it offers no benefit when your child has a viral upper respiratory infection. So over-the-counter cough, cold, and antihistamines for viral illnesses.
Top sicknesses you're seeing this year?
Influenza by far. I think we have 30 kids a day in my office, and we've hospitalized at least 1 or 2 kids a day with flu complications, and mostly they're kids that did not get the flu vaccine. Pneumonia, sepsis, myositis, had a kid die of tracheitis, all from the flu.
Jeez.
So flu A, 2 RSV is just starting. It hasn't really shown up yet, but it is the winter plague. The RSV shot is effective. I've been using it for 3 years at 90% reduction in kids ending up in the ER in the hospital, especially in under 9 months. And we're seeing a whole raft of this non-flu viral illness that feels like flu. They got the body aches, they got the chills, they got the respiratory, but it's not flu A, flu B, or COVID. And then norovirus is still showing up and
the worst.
Drying kids out like little raisins. So
wow, yeah, that one's a rough one. I've had it.
Yeah.
So a couple brands that seem to be like hot topics.
Yeah.
So the Baby Brezza formula machine is a big one. What are your thoughts on that?
So once again, I know that I'm an older dude, but that's like the baby formula Keurig.
Yeah, exactly, with an espresso for babies.
I mean, look, it does nothing. It's just a nice, fun convenience. But most of the people I know that use it just stop using it.
My son was underfed on it because it wasn't his first.
Yeah, well, exactly. So I hate it. Yeah.
Okay.
So pass on the Brezza.
Okay. And last one would be the skip hop, like that standing thing.
Yeah, I love it. It's bouncy. Your kid's not in a walker, so it's different. It's great to put a baby in there and give them a little activity time.
Just not overused.
Love the skip hop.
Okay, I could talk to you for days, and I know Dale can too. But we unfortunately have to wrap, so we'll come back for part 2.
Yeah.
But that was the best ever first dad on our podcast. That was one of my favorite, probably the favorite topics to date. So thank you so much for coming all the way in for this.
So much, Michael.
I can't wait to come back for part 2.
Yes. Let's do a part 2.
You have to tell me, and I am back in LA.
Where can everyone find you?
Oh, so Instagram is at Peds at the Meadows or Michael Milobsky. It'll show up either way. TikTok is Dr. Mike M. My YouTube channel is Dr. Michael Milobsky. I also have a concierge pediatric practice that I've been building for 15 years, but has become obviously a lot bigger. I work with families both in Metro Denver and remotely as well. And that's chickensoupdenver.com.
Wow.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Michael. This was amazing. And we hope everyone enjoyed the episode.